Okay, in today's video, I want to address parts and patterns on the Octatrack, what they mean, how you work with them. Seems to be rather confusing. I know I was really confused when I first got my Octatrack, so hopefully I can shed a little light onto the situation. So on track 1, I have a drum sample loaded up, and I have it sliced and spread across my triggers. Great. So let's take that, copy the track over to pattern 2. Now, I have the same pattern on pattern 1 and pattern 2. Now let's say I wanted to change the drum sample, so when I switch from pattern 1 to pattern 2, I'm switching drum samples. So, normally to switch your drum sample, you go up here, select your new drum sample, and I got a new drum sample. Problem with doing that is when you switch back to pattern 1, it's the same drum sample. The reason that is because we didn't switch the part, we only switched the pattern. Now the patterns have to do with the triggers and how you've set up your parameter locks, and the part has to do with the settings for the machines, these parameters right here, however you have your machine set up. So when you switch from pattern 1 to pattern 2, if you want to have your samples change, you have to apply those changes to the part. That way the sample changes. So what we're going to do, go back into pattern 1. I'm going to bring up my parts menu. You do that with function MIDI. So I can see that I've got a little star on pattern 1 up there. That means there's been some changes made. I'm going to go ahead and copy part 1 to part 2. So now part 2 is the same as part 1. Alright, so I'm still in part 1. Now I'm going to go into pattern number 2. Bring up my parts menu again. I'm going to go back into part 2. And I'm going to engage part 2. Now part 2 is the same as part 1. However, I can now change my sample. And you notice it says part 2 up here for pattern 2. Now when I switch back to pattern 1, the part switches to 1, pattern 1. This, the parts applies to your effects. So if I'm in pattern 2, I can change my thing to compressor or comb filter. That works. And then when I switch back to part 1, it switches back to delay. So that's how you change your settings on your pattern, or on your machines between your pattern changes. Because the pattern, once you change the part, it will associate it to that pattern. I hope that clears things up.